Listening to voices, stories can be strange. It's good to open up to new stories and finding backstories of how people came to be, only to free the mind of what blinds us with only a glance gives us a chance to see people be who they truly are, from silent voices to shining light. Stories that inspire awareness and change. I welcome you to Jessie Stories, Unheard Voices. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome everyone to Jessie Stories. If you like the content, please subscribe. And today we have special guest Cheyenne, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi Jessie, thanks for having me. I'm Cheyenne. I use they them pronouns. I'm a Bookstagrammer, and I also work for the Down East Rainbow Alliance, which is located in Washington County, Maine.
Nice. Thank you so much. When did you start becoming a booktuber / influencer?
I guess I don't really consider myself an influencer so much, but I did start using Bookstagram in 2020. Like a lot of people, I needed a hobby, and I realized that I had already been doing that on my own personal Instagram page when I was reading books and reviewing them on Goodreads and then posting pictures of it and my reviews on there. And so I just made more of a concerted effort to follow other Bookstagrammers and made a lot of changes to how I did things to try to make things a bit more aesthetic and streamline the way I did book reviews. And it's just grown since then, and now I have over 7K followers, and it's been quite the experience. I've made a lot of really cool friends from all over the world, so I have really enjoyed my time on Bookstagram. And for those of you who may not know, I'm saying Bookstagram a lot, but it's just the book side of Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. I was about to ask. Oh yeah, what made you think I wrote similar things? Yeah, you pretty much answered that. How did you come up with the name Queer Bookworm? I think it's very clever.
Thanks. I use the word queer to describe myself, and I've always considered myself to be a bookworm, and because I am primarily a fantasy reader, I used the Y as for bookworm as like dragons, because dragons are sometimes called worms. So Queer Bookworm was born.
I love that. And I didn't even think of the Y being that. That's really cool, actually. Yeah. I personally love fantasy too. I just haven't read in the queer genre enough fantasy. I have 2 books that are on my list that I have physically here that I have to read that are fantasy and queer.
The majority of the books I own over 300 books, and the majority of them are queer books and mostly fantasy, so I have a lot. If you need recommendations, you know where to find me.
I absolutely do. I just right now have a load of them, but I will use any recommendations you have. Plus, I am following you on Instagram, so I do see all the ones you post. I guess technically Cinderella is dead. Does that count as fantasy?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, then I have read fantasy because I love that author, Caitlin Byron. Yeah. She's my favorite
I love her as well. I've read a lot of her books so far.
Same. I've just read almost all of them except for 3. She's one of my favorite authors ever. But anyway, what are you currently reading?
Right now, I'm reading the book Snow Roses by Taryn Tyler. She's an indie author. I think she was one of the first indie authors I started following when I got on Instagram, and I'm just now getting around to reading it, so it's been a while. I'm one of those people where I'll buy books and they'll sit on my shelf for years, and so I'm just now getting around to it, but it's a queer retelling of Snow White, and it's also mixed with Sleeping Beauty and Red Riding Hood.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so it's a sapphic story.
I love that. And is there any other ones you're reading? Since I know some people read multiple at once, some people don't.
I am not a multiple books at a time person. I'm very methodical and strategic with my reading, so I usually read only one at a time. The only time I read more than one is if I'm doing a book club or a buddy read with someone where maybe they're reading a little bit slower, then I'll have 2 books going, but most of the time I stick to 1 book.
That makes sense. I like that. I'm personally not a 1 book person. I'm like a 3 to 4 book person.
but that's because of my
Yeah.
attention span and keeping and paying attention.
Yeah. I'm pretty good at focusing. I'm also the kind of person who schedules out my books to be read months in advance. I have a book cart here. This is my TBR cart, and I've got books here through September.
That's pretty awesome. I might have to start doing that because I can't keep up with my own insanity. I have 4 books that I read at once. But let's see. Do you feel that there is enough, I might pronounce this wrong, agender resemblance in books and shows?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't think there is enough representation of agender identity because I don't think I've read a book where there's been a main character that has been agender. I've read books where characters were genderqueer or fluid or generally non-binary, but I've not read one that has an agender main character, and I've never seen an agender character in any TV shows or movies, and that's because I'm not counting aliens or robots or things like that. There's not been any human agender characters in anything that I've watched. But if people have those recommendations, please tell me what they are so I can find them. I think some of that is also because I don't read a lot of contemporary. I think there's a lot more representation within queer contemporary young adult novels, and I don't read contemporary. I find it to be pretty boring, to be honest. I need some dragons or magic or spaceships or something, so it's harder to find those identities in fantasy and sci-fi, but I try to find them when I can.
Understandable. And I fully agree there isn't enough at all, at least even for me personally reading. And I'm also still learning terms, so if you could, or even the audience and myself too technically, what agender is, or agender? How do
Agender. Yeah.
Agender.
So
Okay.
agender is under the non-binary umbrella, and it means somebody who doesn't really identify with any gender. It means without gender, agender without gender. So for me, that means I don't identify with any genders. I don't think gender can tell you anything about me. I don't think gender says anything about who I am, and I just feel like me. I don't feel like I'm anything, which I think can be confusing for some people, but that's how I feel about it. I don't really identify with anything. I'm just a person, and that's all I want people to see me as, is a person. And I use the non-binary term just because I live in a pretty small place, and most people have never heard the word agender. A lot of people have heard non-binary, so I use that as an umbrella term, which still means I'm outside of what most people would consider your typical binary genders.
Okay. I'm learning too, so that was good to learn that, because
that's part of my job too at the organization I work at, is I do trainings on what a lot of this stuff means. And to be clear, I'm not an expert in everything. I don't know every single term and definition that there is out there. It's always changing. And the other thing to remember is that everything is a spectrum, and it's going to be different for every person. So if you found 5 non-binary people or 5 agender people and asked us all what it means to be agender, we're all going to give you different answers.
That's very true too. I'm learning that gradually still, and I'm trying to learn terms correctly, since yes, I am part of the community, but even in Sammy's interview, I brought up the fact I'm still learning, and she said she's still learning too. But
yeah, you're always going to be learning. I'm always learning. I'm always learning new things, especially from younger people. So it's always changing, and I don't think you have to feel like you have to have encyclopedic knowledge of what all of this stuff is. You don't have to hold all that in your brain. That's what Google is for.
That's true, but Google doesn't always have the answers. I've learned that through the escaping twin flames behind the scenes thing. I've typed in about certain roles and it doesn't always tell the truth. So sometimes it might not fully have that either for our community. I haven't personally tried it, so I can't say yes or no on that positively. But
I know when I've Googled certain things, I have been able to find the answers, or at least found a website that was able to give me the answers. And there's also a lot of Instagrammers out there that have a lot of this stuff on their page. I think there's one Instagrammer whose name is Zoe Stoller, and they post a lot of informational stuff and definitions about different identities, and it's really helpful.
Zoe Stoller. I will look them up after this interview. That's very helpful, honestly. And if you want to, do you want to add more about the organization you work for? Because it will be down in the comments for people to look at.
Of course. I work for the Down East Rainbow Alliance, and we're a queer advocacy group in Washington County, Maine. We're a very small org. There's only a handful of us that work there. And we started out as a talking circle, a community talking circle, and just trying to figure out what the needs are for LGBTQ plus kids in Washington County, because the suicide rates here are very high. And so our goal is to advocate for them, educate the public, and support them in all of these ways, and supporting agencies and educators about these things so that we can lower that rate. And so our main goal is suicide prevention. And we do that by using the Traveling Rainbow Project, which is a traveling pride display that we bring to schools, and we just set it up, and it's got pride flags and pronoun pins and stickers and all kinds of just goodies and snacks. And basically we're bringing queer joy to one of the most rural places in Maine. Where I live, it's not just rural, it's remote. It's hard to get places. Everything's very spread out. There's no public transportation. There's nowhere for kids to gather. And so bringing this stuff to them so they can see that it's okay to be themselves, and for them to also see a queer adult, that they can grow up to be adults. That is a huge thing for them to see, because we also live in a place that has a lot of Trump flags, and it's a very conservative area. And so there's a lot of stuff that is very hard for these kids. It's hard for adults. And so it's even harder for these kids that aren't seeing themselves anywhere and are constantly being told by the adults in their life that they don't matter, or that the things they're going through aren't real. So that's what we're there for, is to support them. And we have a Discord server that kids can join and connect with other queer kids in the county, because maybe they're the only kid in their school that they know is LGBTQ. So now they can connect with other kids in other schools and do it that way. And we also do pro-social events. So we plan events throughout the summer and throughout the school year that we're bringing these kids together so they can do things together. And we also plan Down East Pride, which is this area's Pride Festival. And that's coming up really soon. And this is the first year that I've planned it. And we have 2 days of it. So we have June 29th in Eastport and June 30th in Lubec. And they're the most eastern Pride events in the United States, because that's the furthest east you can go. And then it's just ocean. So it's huge. It's not huge as far as it's a big deal. It's a small place, so it's a small number compared to other Pride events. But last year we had about 300 people combined for both days, which is pretty big for around here. It's hard to get people to go to things. So we had really good turnout and we had no problems. And that's always surprising when we live in this place that is pretty conservative most of the time, but we had no problems. We had drag queens. We have drag queens coming again this year. We have the Curbside Queens. If you look them up, they're great. And so we've got four of them coming. We've got 2 queens and 2 kings. So I'm very excited, and it's going to be a good time. We have all kinds of craft vendors and people selling Pride merchandise and things like that too. So I'm very excited for it.
Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, honestly. And that's great that this organization exists, period, because we need more of that. Like where I live, I'm also in a very conservative area with Trump flags. But I think in the area I'm in right now, the schools, there could be kids too, but I don't think there's any organization up here, but I haven't personally checked to see. But there should be more organizations like the one you work for, and it's great what you're doing too. So thank you so much for spreading and helping the youth, especially with the stupid laws happening all around the world, which sucks.
Yeah, indeed. And Maine is a little bit better about some of these laws. Maine is usually pretty good about these kinds of things, but it really depends on the school you're at and the administration there, how open it is. So that's what we're doing, is trying to improve those environments for these kids and just to make it safer so that more queer teens are becoming queer adults.
That's great, honestly. I used to work in the school system, and one thing that I've learned, at least from all the ones I was at, mostly all the adults are straight. I was always the only one that was queer when I was there. And with that, they play the open card, but then it's not the truth. You're the only queer one, and they're the one, you will always be the one that they're willing to get rid of if they need to. That's something that I learned. And if you bring and talk about
the only queer person in the room wherever I am. I'm also often the only Black person in the room. Maine is a very white state, and especially where I am, there's not a lot of people of color here.
Oh geez. So you're used to that too, of being the only person?
Yes.
That's actually nice to know too, to have someone else having. With me, I can't go into Black because I'm not Black, but I can at least do queer, because
Yeah. And that's also why it's good for me to be in the schools for kids to see a queer person of color that is thriving in life and is doing okay. Because there are people of color, and most of them are indigenous people. We have the Passamaquoddy tribe in this area. And so I think it's also good for them to see that as well.
Yeah, you are doing really great things, that means too, that you're bringing even more to light too. That's awesome. And now YouTube, you get to be on YouTube. Hopefully this reaches a lot of people. How can we improve as a society with more agender representation? Just your personal opinion on that.
I think more people need to know what it is. I think more people need to know that there are more gender options than just male and female. And I think that itself has to be more normalized. And I think that's happening bit by bit. But I think we also have to expand our understanding of what non-binary is as well. It's not just one kind of thing. There's multiple different ways to be non-binary. There's not just one way. And I think once we have that representation, I think it will be easier for someone to be able to say explicitly on TV, I'm agender. So I think that is also what we need, is people to explicitly say, I am this thing, instead of leaving it ambiguous and making people guess. Because headcanons are great, but I also want to hear it.
Yeah, and straightforward to the point. It's helpful, honestly. I like straightforward to the point too. If people were to put it, on your Instagram, you have it directly on there. That's the only reason why I was able to write the questions I was, because I don't. Now I do understand the umbrella of agender. Not full understanding, but an understanding. And yeah, so I hope more people do open up. And if any viewers are under the umbrella or just considering, please check out Cheyenne's Under the Rainbow.
Down East Rainbow Alliance. Yeah, you can find us on downeastrainbowalliance.com. Or you can you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. We're also on there.
And all links will also be down below, and also Cheyenne's links to following them will be down below. And then, who is your favorite author right now? And it can be multiple ones too. It doesn't have to be one.
That's good, because I have a stack of books right next to me to explain this.
Perfect.
I'm a book person. I always have a stack of books somewhere. So the first author I will talk about is Rinchi Pecco, who is the author of The Bone Witch. And this is probably one of my favorite book series that I've read. I love this. Rinchi Pecco is a non-binary author. They're also Asian. And this is a YA fantasy, and it's about necromancy. I never know how to pronounce that, but I read it. I've got all kinds of flags in here. I've read this series twice, and I love it so much. This particular book doesn't have a non-binary main character, but it does have a trans side character and a couple of sapphic characters. And Rin's other books that they've written do have more representation. They have an adult series, Silver Under Nightfall, which shows a polyamory relationship and bisexuality, and so a lot of their books are queer. So if you just look up Rinchi Pecco, you can find all kinds of queer books by them. Their book The Sacrifice has a non-binary main character, and that's a horror, YA horror. So I just always love Rinchi Pecco. The next author that I have prepared is N.K. Jemisin. I love her. She writes a lot of sci-fi, and this is like a blend of sci-fi fantasy, the 5th season. And this book was so crazy. When I read it, the twist was wild. I was confused for 90% of this book. I did not know what was going on 90% of this book until I got to the end, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And a lot of her books have queer characters in them as well. The City We Became has a lot of queer characters in that. I've got the second book on my TBR, so I love N.K. Jemisin. Plus, I love reading more Black authors that write sci-fi and fantasy, and she's one of them. And she was definitely heavily influenced by Octavia Butler, which is definitely one of my all-time favorite authors as well. And then I've got Becky Chambers. I've been reading a lot of Becky Chambers this year. She writes a lot of cozy sci-fi, and all of her books are queer, and I love that. So if you're looking for a cozy, low-stakes sci-fi book that's a very character-centered. There is a plot, but it's mostly about the characters and their growth, and I love that about her books. And the last one I have is an indie author, and this is Nicole Bailey. She's one of the authors that I follow on Instagram. She's a good friend of mine, and I love all of her books, and she's got several series right now. This one is A Veil of Gods and Kings, and this is book 1 in the Apollo Ascending series, and there are 4 books in this series, and it is an Achillean love story. So it's two male characters in love, and there's a character that is asexual and aromantic, and I love all the characters in these books. And she's got another adult series that has a bunch of queer characters in it, and she's got a YA series that has queer characters in them, and she just came out this month with her newest duology, which is In the Midst of Omens, and it's an Epic of Gilgamesh retelling. So
I need to check her out.
Yeah, so definitely check out Nicole Bailey. She's definitely one of my favorite indie authors. I will always recommend Nicole Bailey's books. So you can also find her on Instagram at author Nicole Bailey.
That's gonna help me too in my random following. I'll try to get her on here too, and some of your other favorites too. But yeah, it's gonna be a little bit. Okay, and my next question, I am following this correctly. Yeah, when did you start working with Down East Rainbow?
I started working with the Down East Rainbow Alliance last year. I started in April of 2023. I had taken a break from working for a couple of years before that. I was a domestic violence advocate and educator, and that is as rewarding as that job is, it takes its toll. It was a lot to be a domestic violence advocate. So I took a couple of years off, and then I saw the Down East Rainbow Alliance was hiring facilitators, and so it just kind of fell into my lap, and it aligned with everything that I wanted to do, which was advocacy and education and also working with youth, and it just all fell into place. And since I've been there, I've been going to a whole bunch of schools, and I've recently started offering Rainbow 101 trainings, which are the trainings that I give to schools and agencies and medical providers on the basics of LGBTQ plus things. I give a lot of information about the statistics, about the mental health impact on LGBTQ youth and adults, so people understand the reason why we exist, because I get a lot of questions as to why does this need to happen? Why do I need to know about this stuff? And once I show them the statistics about the mental health of these kids, and they realize, oh, kids are dying, that's why we're doing these things. And also it just gives them kind of a basic understanding of the terms and definitions that people hear and you don't even know what these words mean. So they're learning the basics for that, and just basics around pronoun use, because a lot of people around here have no idea how to use they them pronouns. They don't understand why they exist or how to use them properly. So it's a lot of educating around these basic principles.
That's very awesome. I like that a lot. And let's see, sorry, I get nervous. I guess we're on to the very last. So thanks so much for being here, Cheyenne. And where can everyone find you? And
you can find me on Instagram at queer_bookwyrm, and you can also find Down East Rainbow Alliance at Down East Rainbow on Instagram, or at www.downeastrainbowalliance.com, and you can find us there.
Thanks so much for being here, and then subscribe and check out all of Cheyenne's stuff, including Down East Rainbow Alliance, because I'm going to leave all links to everything Cheyenne and everything Rainbow Alliance, and I will look up some of the authors too and leave their links down below. And yeah, thanks so much for being here. Embrace your truth, tell your story. I have a story, you have a story to tell. Thanks everyone, peace.
Thanks so much for being here, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode, with many more to come. If you'd like to help support and grow the podcast and even the YouTube channel, please not only follow, like, subscribe, but please leave a review on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to this podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Until next week, on Wednesday at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Peace. Catch you later.